I call this meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. And then do we need to approve the February minutes? Is that next?
Yes.
Okay. Could I have a motion to approve the February minutes? Or wait, I'm sorry, I messed up. I've already messed up. Do we need to amend the February minutes? No, no changes needed.
I make a motion to approve the February minutes as presented.
I second.
Okay. Thank you for that. I think that means the minutes are approved. So then we need to approve today's agenda. Obviously, it's not May 2nd, but I don't even know what day it is. The 23rd?
It's May 23rd. I know, I had to look. I was like, I don't know what day it is either. Monday.
So I would make that amendment to the agenda, but anything else, anybody?
So did you need a motion? Is that right?
Do we need to motion to approve the minutes? No, I'm sorry, the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I do need a motion.
I make a motion. We approve the agenda then.
I second it.
Thank you, guys. And then it looks like we're going to roll into some reports from Justine.
Right. Yes. So I have February, March, and April in your little packets here. And it's been like a pretty normal year. I will say, and I don't know if it really shows so much here because these are kind of early months, but our cat season started like way later this year than it normally does, which is weird. It always feels like it's been getting later and later, but this year it wasn't until probably like late April into May that I went from having like 4 cats to having like 25 in a maternity ward over like one weekend. A lot now, but a manageable number, but they definitely started later this year. And then you'll see in March too, that we had like 7 dogs that we had to euthanize, which is like a whole lot for us, especially just in 1 month. That's like a whole lot for just like 1 quarter, let alone 1 month. But I definitely think that we are seeing, unfortunately, some results of the pandemic and people like not socializing their pets at all, and then them getting out, biting people, attacking other dogs. That's been like a common trend this year, like more than we normally deal with, which is really hard because it's not, it's not the dog's fault necessarily, but at the same time, some of these have just been, 3 of them were probably some of the most aggressive dogs I've ever seen in my life. They were really awful, like just really scary, like to the point to where they belonged to a man who had been admitted to the hospital and his dogs were in his car. He said he was living in his car, but I think he was also living somewhere else in Springdale, but he was coming to Fayetteville for services, but he would get admitted to the hospital, but he would purposefully leave his dogs in the car, and then they would call us. We'd have to come out and get his dogs. This happened twice before we ended up just keeping them. He wasn't able to take care of them, which is good because he needed to seek services of his own. And I think the dogs were preventing that in a way. But so March was like kind of a rough month with that. But it's getting better, but it's definitely a trend I've seen, I would say, like this year, that we've just been dealing with more like behaviorally unsound pets than dogs, specifically, not cats so much, than we normally do. But our euthanasia rate, I mean, overall is still, meeting no kill standards, definitely less than 10%. I think the highest it got was like 5% at one point. But other than that, I mean, everything's been going pretty well. We haven't been overwhelmed to the point where I felt like we've been in a crisis at any point. I do feel like, we're staying steadily busier, certainly than we have been the past 2 years. So I think things are kind of getting more back to normal, but not any kind of like alarmist situation or anything like that. We're still able to handle everything that's coming through. The demand for our income-based spay neuter program is like higher than I've ever seen it. It's like continued to grow. So I think that that's something that, you know, people are really using, which is great. So I appreciate that people are getting their pets spayed and neutered. That's always awesome. We're always happy to help people with that if they meet those income guidelines. And even if they don't, you know, that's something I always tell people too. Like, don't be afraid to call us. We can, you know, point you at other resources that maybe can help that aren't income based. Like Humane Society of the Ozarks has a voucher program where there are no income restrictions. So, because it's expensive, even if you make, you know, a really steady income, it still can be expensive sometimes to have your pets spayed or neutered, especially if they're like really big, like large animals. So, but we want people to get that done because it's important for their pets' health and, you know, helps curb the population. So we can always point you in the right direction there. And then just trying to think, that's really the only like trend I'm seeing this year is just dealing with some dogs that it's one thing to deal with dogs that just haven't been socialized and being able to help them and get them to come around. But some of the aggression that we've been seeing, I don't know. I mean, I guess sometimes maybe you just have a run of luck like that, but it's been more this year. Like I'm pulling dogs that I just don't feel safe, like putting up for adoption. Some that we can't even handle after they've even been there for, you know, 2 weeks. Big dogs, mainly, not small dogs. So anyways, other than that, everything's been pretty normal. Nothing to write home about. That raccoon that y'all saw on the news, that was a whole mess. It did not have rabies. Unfortunately, I do think it was probably a nursing mother raccoon, although I don't know that anyone ever found her babies. So that was all just like kind of sad and definitely, you know, not something that we recommend doing, picking up wild animals at any time, particularly with your bare hands in crowds of people. So, not that any of y'all would ever do that, but in case anybody has.
I do that all the time.
The time, yeah, right. Your chickens don't count. No. Yeah, that was something that I felt really bad. I woke up the next morning and I didn't even know it had happened. And I felt really bad for my officer that was on call. He didn't even call us, you know, he just went out and handled it the best he could, which was great. But definitely some calls you get the short end of the stick. And I think that was one where you just have a lot of people watching, which is always kind of like a million people watching you do your job and you're trying to, you know, do it well and do it quickly and cover all your bases. And then anytime there's alcohol involved too, it always adds like a little fresh twist on things and dealing with people. So, but I think he handled it really well. So anyways, but it didn't have rabies. So that's good. In case anybody was wondering.
So did they let the raccoon go? Is that, or did something, they had to wait to test a raccoon for rabies?
Yeah, so to test any animal for rabies, you have to euthanize it and you have to ship its head off.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way to test. You send it to the health department gives you a kit and you remove the head, you put it in this bucket, you take it to the health department, and then usually within 24, maybe 48 hours on the outside, Monday through Friday at least, you'll get results the next day or the following day. But yeah, that's what a lot of people don't realize. You can't just like monitor it and see. Now for like domestic dogs and cats, if they bite somebody, you can do a quarantine, right? Like a 10-day quarantine where they're supposed to be kept, if not, you know, like at a vet's office, at least secluded from other people and pets in the home. And then at the end of that 10 days, they go to a veterinarian and they get examined and cleared from rabies. But yeah, so that was really unfortunate because I'm sure that raccoon was just living its best life there, like eating all the great snacks, you know, and I'm sure it didn't ask for any of that. But at the same time, you have to be safe too, because, you know, rabies is rabies and it's real serious stuff. So if you get it, you die, except for like one person, I guess. But anyways. Does anybody have any questions about any of these numbers?
So Justine, we just had the university is I guess they're out now, right? Or yes, I forget what day it is now, you know, so do we have an uptick in abandoned animals or anything like that after the students leave, or
Sometimes, yes. Anecdotally, so far, no. But that's just because like everybody's lease doesn't end exactly when graduation is. So
Yeah.
it does happen though. It definitely does, unfortunately. Usually less dogs than maybe like cats or pocket pets that people leave. I mean, for one thing, like if you just move off and leave, like we know who you are. Like we just ask your landlord and they tell us who you are. And then, you can get charges filed against you if you just straight up left and had no intention of coming back. Now, I will say a lot of times we get calls, and a lot of times the last thing people move is their pets. A lot of times they'll move their stuff, they'll come back. So a lot of those cases end up being resolved, but occasionally they don't. And it's definitely, I don't want to paint with a broad brush or anything. It's definitely not just students that do this. I mean, it's all kinds of people that find themselves doing this, unfortunately. So, but it does happen, yeah. And that's one reason why, like when I started, we had like you had to be 18 to adopt, and then we changed it to like 20, and then we changed it to 21 with a parental, or 20 with a parental reference, and then we finally just put it up to 21. And that's just because we were having when we still do sometimes have a lot of people. It's just a very transitional time in life, right? And that's not to say that people in college can't have pets. I mean, by all means, but it is a big thing to think about. But we have a lot of college students that use our spay neuter program too. So, we love that. And a lot of them volunteer for us too. But yes, to answer your question, yeah, it does happen.
Do you think you'll have to expand your veterinarian's hours because of the spay neuter program, that it's growing? Or are you still able to, do what you need to do in the time allotted?
We've not usually had such a problem keeping up with the demand. Usually appointments in the past, I would say anywhere from 1 to 2 up to 3 week wait, which isn't terrible to get in. Right now though, it's probably more like, let's see, what month is it? I have to think for a minute. Right now, if you're scheduling one, it would probably be around the 1st of August. But we do tell people too to call back. So like if we schedule you, because we put them all on Wednesdays, right? So what we don't ever want to do is paint ourselves into a corner where we have shelter pets that can't get out the door because they're waiting to be spayed or neutered. So we do tell people though to like call us on a Monday. If we don't have enough in-house to fill our schedule, then we'll bump your appointment up. Like we don't care at all. So we're able to, if you really, and we do try to fit in, like if you have like a female cat that is indoor, outdoor, like we try to accelerate those, and maybe put neuters back a little bit. But Dr. Henley works Monday through Friday. She works a full 40 hours and she's on call all the time, basically, for emergencies. So I don't really think we could like extend her hours any more than she already works. She's a hard worker. But there's also other, like I said, really great resources in our area too, like Spay Arkansas, and just a lot of local vets that, are, I feel like, pretty reasonably priced. I mean, I know everything's expensive, but I think we have a lot of really good, vet clinics in our area. So I would love to hire another vet though. I mean, like just to do spays and neuters all the time. Like, why not? I don't think we have enough people to where we could justify that demand though. But I'm glad people are using it. So, and it does ebb and flow. So I just think that for whatever reason right now, it's been a really busy time. And maybe it's stuff that people have put off because of the pandemic. And now they're just now like, oh yeah. And I think a lot of people were under the impression that we were like really like closed for a while. So, but yeah, so normally we keep up with it pretty well, but we'll still try to help you out if it's an urgent situation. Any other questions on my statistics here? That's all I have on that.
Justine, do we have, I don't have my printout. Do we have vacancies on the board?
We do, yes.
Okay.
So I talked about this just real briefly right before we started, but
Okay, sorry.
no, you're fine. We have one vacant position right now that's open. And then I think we're going to have one more because I haven't heard from Billy Furman in like a year. So I
Yeah,
kind
I think we should just, well, it's too late to advertise for this go round, but I think Billy Furman probably is not coming back, you know.
Yeah, and I did get with the city attorney, or I got with the city clerk, and they told me to get with the city attorney. So I sent her a like certified letter. I guess there's been some instances where people have been removed from boards, and then they got really angry because they didn't know or whatever. Which I would love to give everybody the opportunity, of course, to know. But I did send her a certified letter, so I was just waiting for that receipt to come back before we open her position. But I sent it like a while back, so I would think this next go around it would be fine to open her position for sure.
Yeah,
So we should have two. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyways, that's all I had. So. And then I don't have anything like under the old business. I don't have any updates for either one of these. They're still just percolating back there, waiting.
Is there, Justine,
Mhm.
is there any reason why the ordinance is not happening? It makes me nervous.
I know. I don't like it either. I keep bringing it up, but then no one is just not, administration just hasn't felt like it is the right time to put it forth. So I personally can't just unilaterally make that decision to put stuff on there. I mean, everybody's supportive. I mean, my boss is certainly supportive, and I know that Yolanda's talked to Susan about it, who's the chief of staff, and I've just been waiting for them to give me the okay. I pretty much everything's like, I have the memo and everything all set to go. So as soon as they say it's okay, we can put it on there.
Would it be helpful to send an email and
You're more than welcome to do that. I have no
Okay.
problem with that. I never have a problem with lobbying. I feel like everybody should talk to their local government officials in a polite manner.
of
Do
course?
you want me to, I can talk to the assistant, the mayor's office and see what the deal is. I know we've got a lot of, I don't know why. I mean, sometimes these things that they consider to be smaller issues, you know, they kind of push them off so that we have, you know, because we have big issues. But this has been something that we kind of worked out the language on and has been sitting there for quite a while.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I have no problem with anybody talking to anybody. I think that'd be great.
Okay.
And then, oh yeah, I forgot. I was going to talk about the pub crawl. Well, it was really fun this year. My heart wasn't really in it. This year, I lost my dog. Like I'm still depressed about it. My oldest dog that like I've been going, she's literally felt like she should have gotten a pension from the city because she has come to work with me like every day for the past 12 years of my life. And so, but anyway, she passed away. So my heart was like broken and I don't know. Anyways, it still is. But so the pub crawl for me this year was a little bit like something, it was like more like a chore, whereas usually I'm always excited about it. But it turned out to be a really great day. We had like one minor hiccup. Poor Emily was stationed at a local business that clearly didn't get the memo, even though they signed up to participate, because she got there and they were like closed for a private event. But other than that, everything went off really well. We raised almost $7,000 and
Wow.
we had a really great time. Best Friends Animal Society sponsored the event. So basically all the proceeds went directly back to us because we really had very minimal cost associated with the event. And I had lots of great volunteers that showed up. A lot of people were brand new that I'd never met before. This was really great. And it was just really nice to kind of get back to normal and also to visit some businesses and support local business that I really haven't very much since this whole pandemic started. So I think, overall, the response was really positive, and I'm really looking forward to doing it up big time next year, because next year will be the 10th one. So I think I'm going to start planning extra early next year and pull in some people and try to make it like the biggest one yet. It'll be really good.
I've only been to one, but it was was really nice. If you guys haven't been to it, you should definitely go next year. I mean, I can't take my dog though. She just not ready for prime time, evidently.
Yeah, it kind of is a lot to ask of your dog. Every dog's different too. Like I have 4 dogs now. And there's only a couple of them that I would trust to like go out and not embarrass me in public. But yeah, it is fun, and it's just fun to see people with their dogs. And I love
it was really interesting. I enjoyed it. And, my dog, she just got really slobbery and ran around and, pulled me down on the sidewalk. It was just that wasn't so much fun, but anyway.
We had a really good time, even though it turned out that the business wasn't going to let us be there. We actually kind of set up shop at 21st Amendment and got to like just participate in the event. And it was just really fun to see everybody coming by with their animals. And there was a lot of traffic, and it seemed like everybody was having a good time.
Yeah, it was a fun day, and the weather was a really beautiful day to have it too. Unlike my child's birthday party that I had yesterday, which is where I'm pretty sure I picked up the stomach bug, it was 58 degrees outside, and we had a pool party.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, this weather is.
They still got in the pool, didn't they?
Oh yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Well, it's heated, but I didn't think they would. That's why I'd made like contingency plans to try to keep everybody entertained, but they swam, which was really amazing. So
yeah.
But we had beautiful weather for the pub crawl, so that was super nice. And then the only other thing I had to talk about, this was in the packet that I'd sent out when our meeting was originally scheduled, but it's basically just kind of a background summary. So I have, just to give you a little bit of background. So, and this is in a discussion about adding additional animal services officers to the city budget when the city budget rolls around this year. Currently, we have 3 trucks, 3 officers, and then they have a direct supervisor. She doesn't have her own vehicle, though, so we have 3 trucks. So at any given time, I can only ever have 3 animal services officers, responding to stuff in Fayetteville. And in reality, usually most days I only have 2 scheduled. These people also they share 24/7 call duty. So like every night, every day of the year, every night of the year, there's somebody on call. So if there's like a dog hit by a car or a cat or a deer stuck on a fence or whatever, and cattle in the road, which happens more than you would think. And for things that are real emergencies like that, maybe somebody's house catches on fire, somebody gets taken to the hospital unexpectedly and they don't have anyone there for their pets. People get arrested with their pets, which happens a lot. These are just a few of the things that they would have to respond to, whether it's 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And it's just these 3 people with a 4th alternate that share this burden, if you will, this set of duties. And it's been really challenging. It's actually the most anxiety and stress producing part of my job, because it's really difficult for me to get really awesome, kind, compassionate, trained people and keep them in that job because of the workload, the things that they see and deal with and respond to, in addition to also having to be on call, at least 2 to 3, up to 4 days a week. And heaven forbid somebody goes on vacation or gets COVID. It's a lot. And I haven't asked for additional staff since I started here in 2009. We've kind of switched some people around in different roles. And I feel like I've finessed my staffing as much as I can at this point. Like I can't really tweak anything anymore to add. And plus, it's also gotten to the point where we have all these wonderful ideas on community outreach and community policing type things that we would like to do that we just can't do, even like patrolling parks. That's like a big request that we get every year, because it's a problem, with people thinking that they can let their dogs off leash, that kind of thing. We're not like we're wanting to ride around writing tickets left and right, but it is good to educate people and for people to see our officers in a positive light. I think it's the stigma around animal shelters is one thing. The stigma around people that, still get called the dog catcher and things like that is difficult. And definitely something we'd like to work on, getting out there and seeing us in a positive light so people want to work with us and they understand where we're coming from, that we're not just there to take their pets. I always tell people, like, the last thing I want to do is take your pet. Like, believe me, like there's plenty of other pets whose people either don't care or don't have the resources. Like, I ain't here to take your pet. We just want to, maybe we just have an issue that we need to work out. Maybe we need to talk about how a rabies quarantine works so you can do it at home, so you don't have to, find somewhere to keep your pet, whatever that is. But, our population growth is just enormous in this area. And all that to say, at budget time this year, well, I've asked in the past, but I've been told no, like, don't ask. So I've never actually formally made it to the budget session where you can actually put forth your case and explain, why you would have this need. But we're hoping to do that this year. So to that end, I was kind of hoping, I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have about calls that we run, volume, that kind of thing. And then I was hoping that maybe we could vote to have a formal recommendation just from the board. It doesn't really have any, doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but I think that it would be a good thing to also have to present to them too, that the board also agrees that we could use additional staffing. And I'm asking for 2. I'd be happy with anything, honestly. I feel like 2 is warranted, but I would just certainly, also be thrilled to have just 1 extra officer. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those. Yes. You're muted. You're muted.
Do you have any peer cities that you can compare us to? So you can say, okay, here's a city, on police, they use they use Springdale, Bentonville, Rogers, Jonesboro, I think, and some college town up in Kansas. I'm not sure which I've forgotten which one it is. So those are the peer cities we use for pricing our salaries for police and fire and stuff. But if you have peer cities that you can say, okay, here's a city that's roughly the size of Fayetteville, and it's maybe a college town or whatever, and they have 5 officers, and 5 trucks or 6 or whatever. And here's how they, so we could that would be helpful,
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Yeah, I can definitely, I did a little bit of that. I don't think it made it into this paper that I see, but we did do some calling around and yeah, I'll get a list of whatever cities that other departments use, because I want to make sure that we're keeping it consistent. But yeah, absolutely. Does anybody have any questions about the types of calls they run or their call volume? I don't know if any of that.
No, I totally support it. Absolutely, with the population. We're the 2nd largest city in Arkansas now. So, no question.
So Justine, will we be able to, or kind of be able to articulate, I know you're asking for 2, and what does that mean that you get to expand to? You were talking about the park walk. So if you had 2, how much does that expand your reach, and what are you able to accomplish? And if you add 1, what extras, or how does that help the overall picture for what you guys need?
Yeah. So one thing we recently did is that I have 3 regular officers and then what we call a field supervisor The field supervisor is mainly a desk job. Like she's she's helping answer phones, dispatch calls. She's also their direct supervisor. So she doesn't have her own assigned truck or anything, but she's also their backup. So if someone's sick, someone's out, like she's always the first one to fill that slot. I took one of my regular officer positions and I made it a senior officer, anticipating that we would at least get one additional officer, with the hope that that person can be lead on our community outreach, things like that, to be able to kind of look at the service requests that we're getting, make sure that everything's being responded to. So our calls fall into three tiers, I guess you'd say. Priority 1, which is an emergency. Priority 2, which means this needs to be ran within the next, 1 to 2 hours. And then priority 3, which just means let's get this done in the next 24 hours. And a lot of stuff, sometimes we've had to kind of cut back some services that we used to provide, just because we're not able to keep up with it anymore. And some of it we had no business doing anyways. Like we used to trap wildlife all the time, but that was just not a service that we really needed to be providing, although we do still loan out traps if anybody wants to try to trap something. And if you ever woke up and had like a raccoon in your living room, which also happens more than you might think, we'll definitely come out and help you with that. So things like that. So we have these 3 tiers of calls. And we've always had this vision too, that it would be nice to kind of break the city up into sections. Right now, the way we run calls is we just get them, we dispatch them out wherever you are in town, like you have to respond. So if you are all the way out on the outskirts of Fayetteville off Weddington and you get a call all the way over in East Fayetteville, you have to get all the way over there. And sometimes I think that people also don't usually realize like how long a service request can take. Like sometimes it's super easy and you can get it done in 30 minutes. Other times, you're interviewing multiple people, you're trying to make contact, you're having to follow up again the next day. It's not just like go run, do this, complete it and close it out. There's a lot of follow-up that goes in, especially if they get a case that ends up having to be referred to like the district court, that kind of thing, if we're writing citations or if we've had to get warrants to seize animals, things like that. So, one officer, I think one officer will just basically let me continue the way we are without losing people to burnout time, and then also give me the flexibility to start doing some community outreach. I think adding 2 officers would give us the ability to fulfill that vision where we can kind of assign sections of the city, almost like a police officer has a beat, maybe an officer can service one particular area. They get to build relationships there. I can't tell you how wonderful it is when the community works cooperatively with us, because if we pick up a dog and we know it belongs somewhere, if we can get flag down a neighbor and they can be like, oh, I think that dog lives here. Like we are more than happy to return your dog straight home. Like we don't want your pets. We want you to have your pets as long as you're taking, adequate care of them. So I think, just being able to get to a more manageable workload where it doesn't feel like we're always putting out fires, where we can actually start providing some coordinated service and outreach is really our ultimate goal. It's kind of like when I first started at the shelter, things were just a mess and we were so overpopulated. I felt like every day I came in and I was just surviving until 5 o'clock. And things like right now at the shelter are amazing, like a great staff and great programs. I mean, things still get stressful, but it's not like it was. Animal control has just been the one segment that I feel like is still just really, it's just really high volume, and people call us for a lot of different things, and like we want to be able to help them for sure. So we're, and I think I personally feel like, Fayetteville offers amazing animal services. I can't tell you how many calls we get from other places, like both in Arkansas, Oklahoma. Every day I'm probably fielding at least 1 to 2 phone calls from people just needing services that their local community isn't providing for whatever reason. So I don't want to make it sound all doom and gloom. It's not at all, but I do feel like my officers are, overloaded, and it's only getting worse from here. So.
And to follow up on that, so with adding, if you got the 2 officers, would that mean that there would be another truck or like, is there a truck with each officer?
Yes. So we are going to present different scenarios, right? So ideally, yes, we would have another fully outfitted truck. And then we're hoping to get another like smaller, what we're calling like an outreach vehicle, because we don't always need to roll up in an enormous 4x4 truck with, for one thing, a lot of things people don't understand. Those things are really difficult to drive and maneuver, like especially if you're pulling in like a tiny neighborhood or a tiny driveway. People get really frustrated with us because they think that it's just we can drive it anywhere, but they're really cumbersome to drive. So we're hoping for one more bigger truck and then one more smaller outreach vehicle. Usually the city is always like, for a while it was those little cubes on wheels, and now it seems to be like a Traverse or something along those lines, where if we need to pick up an animal, we can, but if we're just wanting to, go to the Gully Park concert series and have a tent booth and hand out animal control officer stickers and tell people about our programs, the ability to do that without having to drive up in a huge vehicle. But we would present it both ways. Even if we just got one more, truck, it would still make a world of difference because my officers also don't have any dedicated office time. So they don't have like office hours or anything like that. A lot of times when they're having to write these reports and gather witness statements, download their body cam footage, this is all stuff they're having to either try to do mobilely from their truck or come into a shared station that we have in my office. Actually, they have their own station. But there's not like dedicated time for them to do that. They just kind of have to fit it in around the calls that they're running. So that's also been a point of frustration too, because when we submit a case to court, we have to have all that stuff done, and it does take time to draft those things and get everything together and get it sent over. And we have like a shared drive with the prosecutor's office where we have to load all of our case files and evidence and pictures and videos into. So I think it would also give them the ability to have those dedicated hours, so they know, hey, every Wednesday from noon to the end of my shift, I have time to catch up on all these things that I don't have time to right now. We try to, if it is a simple call, to get it closed out and to get those case notes in and just close it and get it done. Because we do have a lot of citizens that like to follow back up and know what happened, which is reasonable, of course. So we try to accommodate that.
And I guess I have another question. Sorry, y'all. So with those kind of cases you're trying to close out, do the officers need anything in the field? Like, do they have laptops and all the equipment like out in the field? And do they have everything that they need to upload? Or is it that they always have to come back to the office and do that?
So they do have laptops. We used to have nothing. We used to have a radio in the trucks, like a CB radio. And now, and then we had like little tablets, which was really difficult to use because it's a tablet. Then we upgraded and we got laptops like the police use, which has been great, super useful, and they can access our sheltering software from there, which is where we dispatch all of our calls out of and log all of our information. So that part's good. They also have issued cell phones that they can use. And then their body cams, we have a big dock in my office. Those get plugged in there every few days so they can download all that footage. But I will say, I do feel like our officers are really well equipped. That's one thing that with our budget, we've definitely been able to keep on top of. And I think we might be the only animal services type of officers in this area for sure that have body cams, but I cannot tell you how useful they are. Like, then they're just good protection for everybody involved. That's been huge. So I'm really glad that we made that investment a few years ago. So equipment wise, we would of course build into the budget, like when we're asking for a position, we're not just asking for like wages and benefits. It would also include the outfitting cost and the initial equipment charges as well. And then their travel and training, because they do in their job description, they are mandated to complete 2 levels of National Animal Control Association training. So all those things would be captured as well. But the main cost, of course, being, the ongoing salary cost and then the vehicle upkeep as well.
All right, I got one more question. Okay. And then I guess when you were talking, you were talking about like the big truck and then the kind of smaller, easier calls. Do you feel like the workload that you're talking about adding the officers really requires the bigger truck, or it would be more useful to have the 2 smaller vehicles and then have the 3 bigger outfitted trucks because they're harder to maneuver and kind of hit some of those calls?
I do think it would be good to have one more larger vehicle and one smaller vehicle. For one thing, when you're on call, you also take the vehicle home with you. So, if you're on call, especially if it's bad weather, we have certain trucks that are 4x4. So it's good to have that flexibility because you never know like what you're going to get called out in the middle of the night to deal with. So I do think that having one larger truck, just so whoever is on call that night is able to have the truck at their disposal, and we're not trying to have to switch around vehicles because everybody keeps their truck differently. Some people are extremely organized and have everything right where they need to be. And then other people, their truck, I mean, it's not like a landfill or anything like that, but it's definitely different. So it's kind of difficult to hop in somebody else's truck and find all the paperwork that you need or handouts that you might need, that kind of thing, because everybody kind of keeps their stuff in a different manner. That's one thing that our current field supervisor, she's always the one that's kind of like plugging in for whoever's out. And so that's a struggle that she has, is like going in and making sure that she has access to everything that she needs. Usually it's all in the truck. Everybody just keeps it a little bit different. So I do think, having one bigger vehicle and then one smaller vehicle would be fine. I definitely don't feel like we need 2 more fully outfitted large trucks, just one smaller and one bigger.
Okay, well, if anybody has any more questions, please ask them. But then I think I'm going to make a vote for a recommendation. I don't know what the parliamentary procedure is for this, but it feels like a vote situation. So I'm going to say it's a vote situation.
Yeah, I would say like a motion to maybe formally recommend whatever y'all want to recommend.
Okay, I need a motion to formally recommend that Justine brings to the budget meeting and ask for 2 new officers and 2 new vehicles.
I make the motion, what you said.
And I'll second it.
Okay, so the board approves you taking 2 officers and 2 vehicles to the budget meeting. I think. Are we going to call that official?
Does anybody object? I mean, is everybody on board?
No, I don't object, but I always thought if you made a motion and a second, then you had to have a vote. I'm not sure, but that's just the
Agree
way.
with that. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that, so then you should say everyone vote and then everybody says yay or nay.
Okay, so all in favor of this recommendation, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, the recommendation has been approved.
Wonderful.
Approved?
Thank you.
Approved.
Yeah.
I think this is great, and I'm going through a hiring process right now, and it's even different than it was when I stepped into my day job position 3 years ago. And so work-life balance is very important to a lot of candidates right now. So I think 2. I think shoot for 2.
Mm-hmm. I'm hoping for, because I have some really amazing people right now, and I want to hold on to them, and that's not to say like I never want to stand in anyone's way. Like anytime anybody leaves the shelter, I don't shun them. I'm glad for them if they want to move on and do something different with their lives. That's great. But I do feel like it's a role that, historically doesn't have a lot. I would like for it not to have as much turnover. Like I used to have a lot of turnover in my shelter attendance because that was a dumpster fire every day and it was a really terrible place to work. It was just really stressful. But now I don't, I very rarely have those jobs come open anymore. And when I do, like my applicant pool is usually pretty strong. And I want the same for my officers. If anything, I think it's almost more important because they're the ones out there face to face with citizens and mediating conflict on people's own territory, which is a lot more difficult than it is to do it over the phone sometimes. So I think it's definitely warranted, and I don't ask for a lot. I definitely want this, so and need it.
So what do you need from us? Do you need us to email or anything at this point?
Like I said earlier, I always encourage people to reach out to their council representatives. I think that, the more they hear from people that it's a priority, like, hey, animal services is a priority. I think that they, need this to do their jobs by all means. I feel like budget time usually comes around, like we start submitting stuff, say in like July, August, and then y'all start having meetings at some point before the end of the year, and then
Probably, probably October's sometime. I mean, we start talking about budget items in July and August, and then we have our actual meetings on them. Usually we have a budget meeting in November, like before Thanksgiving, and then we would vote. And sometimes the budget, you talk about it for a while, and then you get into the first part of the year, and then you voted on it sometimes. So sometimes it goes longer.
Sarah, would it be beneficial if we attended any of, I guess when those are being discussed at like the budget committees or any of the city council meetings, like as it comes?
I don't know. I'm just like,
I've never done this before.
I would say one thing we do is if we have a letter from the committee, saying that we took a vote and we we all approved requesting this, and you have it, if you can have it outlined, here's what we're asking for, here's the dollar amount we want, here's our proof that other cities have a similar thing, then that goes a long way.
Well, I can definitely work on like drafting something like that and get it to Jen, and then if y'all want to review it and then sign it if you agree, of course, then yeah, I can definitely do that.
Yeah, so we just say we took a vote, and like we get stuff like Active Transportation Committee approves this request, or Parks Board approves this request. And so, but you're going to, since I do think animal services does get kind of, the short end of the stick sometimes, you're going to have to really doubly prove that you deserve this. So, because it's going to be scrutinized against things like, I don't know how much it's going to cost, but you're asking for equipment. So, we got fire trucks that we need to have too, and, police cars and things like that. So I think a lot of people forget about animal services too. So really just get out there,
They forget about animal services until they snatch up a raccoon and need it tested for rabies. No.
Yeah. And put it on TV.
Yep.
That was nuts. My sister saw that in Europe.
Wow. Yeah, it like went viral. I was like, oh my gosh. Oh, Arkansas. I love it here.
Yay, Arkansas doing it again.
Yeah.
Knocking it out of the park.
Oh.
But it proves that this part of the country has a lot of contact with wildlife. Take that example as proof that we need, to bolster our animal services, because we live in an area where raccoons show up to baseball games. Okay. Like,
it's the natural state.
Animal services. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
So Justine,
I don't know if you've seen, but Justine did make a little summary about the position and what they do. So if you want to look at that, you can. She emailed it out May 2nd or roundabouts there. But I think a lot of the letter will have this in it as well.
So Justine, would you also send me an email just to remind me about the other thing that I'm supposed to do?
Yes.
Just remind me, because I will. Yeah. So
Are
I'm
you
kind
still
of,
vice mayoring? Like, are you still
I am,
the person
I
in
am
charge?
vice
Okay.
mayor.
All
I'm
right.
vice mayor still, yeah. And hopefully Mayor Jordan, has gotten, at first he thought he was going to have surgery pretty quickly, but the doctors have kind of reevaluated it, and he's got a monitor on, and he's doing day-to-day stuff, but he just can't drive and go into the office and get all riled up and stuff. So but I think at first they thought he was going to have surgery, but they've delayed that decision, and I think every time they delay that, it just means he's doing better and he may not even have to have surgery. So or it'll be
great.
really minor.
Well, he's the only mayor I've ever known, like that I've ever worked for. So, which is
He's
really,
been there a long time,
Yeah.
So but yeah, I'm looking forward to him coming back as well.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah.
That was all I had. The only minor announcement I'll make is that we have restarted our volunteer orientations. We had our first one the weekend before last, and it went really well. So we have another one scheduled for June, which we had posted about on our social media channels. So if anybody wants to get out and do that, I believe the one next month will be on June 18th. And we do those at 10 a.m. just at the animal shelter, and it takes like maybe an hour at the most. So everybody that came, we've actually had a lot of people come in already and start volunteering, which has felt really good. So we're really grateful for that, especially for dogs, to get like our Hounds Around Town program is so good for shelter pets because it gets them out, it gets them that one-on-one human interaction, and they get just out of the shelter, just a break mentally is great for them. So we're excited to have that going on again. And that's the only announcement that I have.
I'm really glad that's coming back up because I have volunteered at various animal shelters, like in college when your life is very transient and you don't know if your next landlord is going to allow pets, and being able to do that and hang out with animals like that was really helpful for me. Now I have my own dogs, but that's such a great program for the dogs, but also for the people. Okay, well, if nobody has any other questions, comments, concerns, it is 6:54 p.m. I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
That's fine. You bring me 2 more medicine.
I think you're the chair, and you just say we're adjourned. That's all we have.
Okay, great.
You call it. You just get to call that.
Then I believe we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming, and I hope that this day worked out a little bit better for you. Everybody's on vacation and all that stuff. It's a tough time. So thank you guys for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.